primary ignition.
I'm just not the hero type, clearly.
What a piece of junk.
Enterprise, this is the captain.
I got a bad feeling about this.
It's all part of the plan.
Engage.
Welcome back to Podcast 2 for 1. I'm your host, Donovan Thompson, with my co-host,
Daniel Wingfield.
In today's episode 226 of Podcast 2 for 1, youtube.com/@2for1 Studios is the best place to consume all the content. If you didn't know, listeners, let's be honest, you probably did not. We are sponsored by Kapow Comics, located at 4047 East Cole Avenue in Sherwood, Arkansas. They have comic books, collectibles, graphic novels, and of course, special guest appearances throughout the year.
Kapow.
Daniel is 226. And, I'll say this every time we do a new episode, I'm like, 224, 225, 226. I feel like we're kind of hitting like a place, at least in my brain, where I'm like, I know we said this a couple of episodes ago, but we've been doing this for a while. Like, it's just, and I go back and look at the old backlog and I'm like, holy crap, like, there's like all this information about you and I talking about things. And it's just, it's pretty wild.
It's forever instilled into the halls of like the internet. And like
it for sure is. But this one's a really cool episode because I didn't have this one on my docket at the beginning of the year. And also and weirdly I didn't, because as our listeners hopefully know by now through the thumbnail, whatever, we're talking about Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. It came out about probably a month ago now, maybe 3 weeks ago now, and at the time of this recording, and it come out on Game Pass for a lot, people who have PC, Xbox, whatever. And of course, it came out also on physical media, exclusive for Xbox. And I believe it's supposed to have a timed release and comes out sometime in spring of 2025 for PlayStation and other platforms. And so I think we got this first announced, I don't know, 2 years ago now. We may have done a Game Awards when this was first dropped information, I believe.
We may have. We usually do one episode on games a year at least, and I think I do think we mentioned it or talked about it. I think it was a Game Awards announcement.
I think so. Yeah. I don't remember exactly when this. I consider the only trailer, but there was a trailer that came out either earlier this year, maybe it was an Xbox showcase, maybe it was the Game Awards last year. I don't 100% remember, but the trailer for this game came out, and of course it's Indiana Jones, and I'm interested because of the property. We found out early on that it was going to be Harrison Ford's face. Then we found out Troy Baker from Last of Us fame would be voicing the character. And I'll say, even though Bethesda is making it, at least I think it's Machine Box Games.
Machine Games made it. Bethesda published it. But John Howard was also the executive producer.
Right. Yeah. And so I know them from Chronicles of Riddick back in the old days. And on Xbox.
Did you ever play any of the Wolfenstein games?
I did. I played. I think all of one and some of two, and the first one's awesome. And I like the second one. I just didn't really get far into it. It was life got in the way on that one. Sure. But I really enjoyed both of them. I think you can get them both on a Game Pass now because of Bethesda.
Yep.
And so, long story short, what I'm trying to say is here, even though I watched the gameplay and the gameplay trailer with the cinematics, those kind of things, I was not blown away by it. I was like, I'm going to play it because it's Game Pass. Day one, it's Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
But I will say, after starting it and really sitting with it and doing something that I typically don't do with games, is to try to do everything on the way and like really take my time with it. I got to say, and I've played Astro Bot, which won Game of the Year this year's Game Awards. Yeah. And I didn't finish it, even though it is so far, in my opinion, a perfect game. And Indiana Jones is not a perfect game, but I will say it's my Game of the Year, easy.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to kind of dive into that with you real quick of why that is the case. But I loved it. That's a long-winded way of saying I loved it. And I'm excited to hear your thoughts about it too.
Yeah. No, yeah. It wasn't on my radar either. I think, honestly, because I think we all kind of assumed in the beginning, like it's going to be an Uncharted, like it's going to be a Tomb Raider, like, right? It's going to be a very linear experience. Probably 8 to 12 hours. You're just going through missions and getting in between cutscenes and all that kind of stuff. And then once it came out, and really this started with the previews, actually, once people were previewing it a few weeks or a month before, I started realizing it's really not. I mean, it does have linear sequences, but this game is more of a contained kind of it's a sim. What's the word before you not life sim. I'm trying to think of the word where it's I can't think of the word. Basically, it's a simulation though, where it's like all the characters have places to go, they have routines, the guards and stuff like that, and you're just kind of released into this open hubs or kind of open world spaces, and just kind of let go to explore and go find mysteries to solve and find puzzles to do. And once I heard about that, I was like, okay, I'm intrigued. I'm an Indiana Jones fan. Still wasn't expecting it to like blow me away. Right. Like I thought it sounds like a fun time. It's a change of pace. I played a little bit of Dishonored in the past, but never got very far, but enjoyed the gameplay. I really enjoyed the gameplay.
Isn't that weird when you play a game, you're like, I really like this, but then you don't finish it?
Well, I'll tell you the thing with Dishonored for me is that the Dishonored wants you to play like stealthy quiet, like no kill as much as possible. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to kill everybody. But if you do that, you get the bad ending of the game. And so it kind of just like deflated. I was like,
yeah, I agree.
I want to use all my powers and kill everybody. I don't want to have to do that and then get like a very depressing ending for all the characters because I do. Yeah, you know.
100% agree.
So how this game comes, and man, it took me by storm. I mean, like, I absolutely adored this game. It's easily my game of the year. I'll even say it's one of the best licensed games ever, up there with the Batman Arkham games in terms of how it makes you feel like the character the property is based around. I didn't know I could feel this much like Indiana Jones in a game. You know what I'm saying? Like I didn't know it was possible to have the whip and the sayings. There's a moment early on where like you're sneaking into the Vatican, but it's like the area before the Vatican, and this like door opens, and then like it's just like light, and it's just like the shadow of Indiana Jones, like just like the movie, and it's like there's just moments where you're just like, oh my god, like this is just perfect. It's like an Indiana Jones fan's like perfect video game. You know what I mean? And so yeah, man, I'm ready to dig into it too, but. Yes, what a great video game. I've started replaying it because I just missed being in the world and feeling like Indiana Jones. Because man,
I told you like I was really desperate to go back in and 100% it, you know, and I haven't went back since I beat it, but it was also just, I want to say, a treat to be playing it at the same time as you, and we both had an urge to, not urge, but like we had an urge to do more, and I would say beat it. We just happened to beat it within a couple of days of each other.
Yeah.
And so, it was really fun kind of texting you, but also not getting spoilers from each other and like, where are you at, you know, kind of thing. Yeah. I'll say, like, you know, for fans who are maybe on the fence, is that the game opens, at least, and we're not going to go through a beat thing of the story, but I want to say that the game opens with the recreation of the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And if this opening doesn't show you the care and the love of the franchise from the developers, then really nothing will. And even from, I mean, the graphics are really good, actually, and you know, especially considering it's a
lighting
game.
is really good. The way
and really though, like, because of these really large environments per level, you're like, oh, it's that, you know, and I get it. It's like, this is really sandy, or this one's really jungly, but it still feels really good, like, for a video game. And the quality feels, I don't know, I guess the trailers just don't do it justice, or because you're not, you know, I had my headset on, so the sound design is really playing effect too.
The sound design is great. All of it.
Oh man, it is the meanest, the best punch in all video games.
It's
just
so
like
good.
in the movies.
And then throughout your adventure, you're just getting these pops of John Williams, one of his best scores. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the second time, actually, you know, I played Star Wars Outlaws, which isn't nearly as good as this, but still had an enjoyable time with it. And it uses a lot of like either John Williams music or John Williams like knockoff, right? And it was the same way. I'm just like, man, there's something about playing a video game with a John Williams level orchestral score behind it that makes it so much more cinematic too. When like all you're getting...
and you can read a book and have a score and make it you can just sandwich and make it
just
better,
makes so much of a difference that like when I punch a guy and then I get the, you know, or if there's a heavy part and then like the main theme kicks in, you know, and you're just like, I was already having fun, but now I'm like it just takes it up another level.
Yeah. And also just because that Star Wars connection, like the love theme or like, between Marion
Yeah.
and you kind of hear with the romance stuff, it's very reminiscent of Princess
Oh
Leia's
yeah.
theme in Star Wars. And so it kind of gives you the Star
John
Wars feels
Williams
too
did,
sometimes.
especially in that era, did a lot of stuff similarly. Even I would say
Yeah.
the main score for Superman is almost arranged just like the main score for Star Wars, which he made a year before.
Yeah.
And like
How can you not?
it's like
You
got
get
that
stuck in
same
your
like
head,
like it goes to that part where it's like the lower horns just playing for a
Yeah.
minute. It does the exact same thing
Yeah.
for the exact same amount of time in Superman. But
Yeah,
anyway,
I mean, it's like a painter using the same kind of
listen,
brush strokes,
I'm not complaining. It's John. I mean,
Yeah.
like no one is complaining. I'm just saying it's like,
It's
once you
noticeable.
find your lane, once you find what you're good at, you don't want to deviate too much.
For sure. But no, I agree with you. The score is there helping you along the entire way.
Yeah.
But just even the performances of the characters in terms of the facial capture
Yes.
and even like mashed up Alfred Molina's character from the first movie.
Yeah.
And I can't think of his name. What's your friend's name who is the other professor at the school?
Oh
He's
yeah.
prominent in the other three
Yeah,
films.
I can't remember his name. Yeah.
What I'm saying? He's great. And here's a big thing just kind of get out of people's heads is that, you're like, oh, it's Harrison Ford is not coming back to play Indiana Jones, right? It's Troy Baker doing an Indiana Jones impression. And I don't know, it's like after 5 minutes, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is just Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, it really, to me, felt like he was doing a very good job and
Yeah.
he was still acting through that impersonation. And I feel like saying impersonation kind of dampens it, and it shouldn't,
Right.
because he does a really good job about it. And he also, I mean, I felt like you really get the emotion. Like, I felt like Troy
Yeah.
Baker was doing a really good job.
Well, listen, Harrison Jones wasn't an option. Harrison Jones does not sound like young Harrison Jones anymore. His
Harrison
voice
Ford,
is
not Harrison Jones.
Harrison
Yeah.
Jones. Yeah, Harrison Ford does not sound like young Harrison Ford anymore. That wasn't an option.
No.
And so,
Nor would he do it. Nor would he do it.
Right. He would not give a shit to do it.
No.
But you're right. It's so good. Like, especially when he, Harrison Ford did that, like, kind of like rumbly, like it just kind of like words flowing into each other. Like,
very good.
Yeah. And like, he does that perfect. There's a couple inflections that I kind of notice it. There's
For
like a couple things that Harrison did that he just doesn't quite replicate perfectly. But like, you're right. You don't know, like, you're just in the world. You feel like you're Harrison Jones, Indiana Jones. You don't feel like Harrison Jones is missing from this experience. Right?
I don't feel like Harrison Jones is missing from it at all.
Yes. Everyone knows what I'm saying. You can get over.
I'm going to retitle the episode.
Harrison Jones in the Great Circle.
Harrison Jones in the Great Circle.
To bounce into the Great Circle actually part, not only is the game just an absolute blast to play. You feel like Indiana Jones. The fighting is so fun, and I want to actually
simple. It's actually simple too, though.
It is, but it's fun in that, like, it's like a playground. You can throw something to distract a guard and then go over here. There's things everywhere to pick up and hit people with. So it really, anytime you get in a battle, it feels like a moment from Indiana Jones where, like, he's an action hero, but he's not really a good fighter. He's always just picking up random shit and hitting people with it. He's not suave. He doesn't know karate, if you know what I mean.
I mean the ancient Japanese art of karate. Yeah. Oh, we'll get into that. I cannot wait to talk about that. Right. No, you're right in the fact that, I didn't use guns hardly at all, nor did I want to, because you're creeping up on somebody. There's always a pot or a pan or a shovel, and grabbing that felt so Indiana Jones.
The sound of the pans, like this cast iron pans, so good.
And also the game does kind of punish you if you do use guns, because the guards immediately like all start using. It's like they don't use guns until you do. It's like they're trying to like have a level playing field.
I kind of like that a little bit. They're like, "Who's this motherfucker with the hat just being an idiot? We don't need our guns." And then he's like, you pull out a gun. Okay, fine." You know what I mean?
It's very movie. Like it's really like it wants you to play like Indiana Jones the movie, and if you don't, then you get punished for it. Like guards, you can really do some, like, once you kind of see the level of, I'm doing some tomfoolery right in this guy's eyesight. He
Yeah.
doesn't see me unless I get right next to him.
Yeah.
It feels like a movie, right? Like it
Sure.
feels like,
Yeah.
but I like that because it's like this is fantasy. This is make believe.
It's a common thing in games. I mean, like, you know, one criticism I've seen that can't really argue with, but it doesn't bother me, is that the AI of like the enemy guards isn't very smart, right? Like just like that.
I liked it.
But yeah, to me, it works because this is like it's a movie. It's a kind of a schlocky thing about these
It's a
movies,
swashbuckling
right?
adventure, 100%.
Yes, and it's just like this is what movie, you know, it's all the protagonist never gets seen when he doesn't need to get seen. Like it to me,
100%.
it just fits with the genre, it fits with the vibe. And I will say, like, I did a lot of times play like Indiana Jones, but there are times that I just decided to be like full on Death Ninja.
Dude,
And
there
I
were
would just
sometimes these things right here would just
Yes.
come out swinging. And I was like, I'm gonna take out an entire camp of people
Yes. Oh,
with
yeah.
these two things here.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I did it, and like, and luckily sometimes, again, like the AI, they'll just come at one at a time sometimes,
Yeah.
and so it's like, well, this is easy. All you have to like manage is your stamina, but like, yeah, no, I would routinely find a camp and just clear it, and then just walk through, find and pick up all the like notes and shit without having to worry about anything. I like doing
Yeah.
that.
Well, the thing too, I want to say, like, you know, one of my favorite, if not my favorite video game franchise of all time is Uncharted.
Yeah.
Because I love like obviously Indiana Jones, I like the swashbuckling adventure and looking for treasure. And one of the things I kind of always said throughout however long decade maybe those games were coming out was that it wasn't until the fourth one I felt like a treasure hunter. Which is an odd thing to say in Uncharted because those are mainly like shooters
Yeah.
where you're platforming shooters, right?
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of platforming going on in Indiana Jones. But
Sure.
to me, the thing I really felt like was that this thing rewards exploration
Yes.
and it also rewards like it is truly like you're pulling levers and
It's a
then you're
puzzle
doing
game.
puzzles. And
It's
they're not hard typically.
no.
But they're rewarding because it's cool to see the mechanisms going and then you're
Well,
getting
and even
character beats.
You'll show up inside of a tent and find a locked chest and 3 different notes, and you've got to kind of use the different
Hey,
information from all
there
of
were
them.
some that I thought were really hard.
There
Some of those
was.
were
There's one I
hard.
looked up because I was like,
I did too.
it was a cursive letter, and I didn't realize what letter. I thought it was a different letter, and I was.
I'm
just
only
stumped.
admitting I looked it up because you just did. I would have said the entire thing. I got
No,
all of
I
them.
did. There was a couple. I think that one and one other one where I was just like, what am I? There was one where it was like a point in the game where I realized you could turn things over, and I didn't realize you could flip it over before that. And so
Yeah.
it was just like I didn't have like the second note for the mystery, and I was like, where
Gotcha.
the hell is it? And I was like, oh, you. And I looked it up, and it's like, oh, and if you flip the paper over, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then I started flipping everything over every time I
Yeah.
right.
Oh, me too. That's that's actually an Uncharted thing. I thought they kind of coined that where you're flipping over
Yeah.
totem like with your hand or whatever. But
yeah, so there was that little like lockbox thing at the Vatican, like that house that moved around, and you had to move stuff like it was like a little you know thing, and like but then like the meat of the puzzles is like the tombs and like the core side quests and mysteries of
and it's stuff that you don't have to do it at all. Like it's stuff that like there's stuff that to me
you
I
think
feel
about
like
it too, and you're like, what if you didn't do any of that stuff? You barely got. I mean, you could have gotten like 30% of what is in the game almost. Like the main quest is great, but like the side quests are all really good and directly like it feels like main quests. It feels like, oh, this is so relevant. You should have had to do this, right?
Well, and typically I would say that they're always tied to like either a character tied to another character in the main quest,
right?
But they almost always exclusively reveal something about Indiana Jones' past or something about his motivations going on. Like the meat of the story really doesn't talk about like his internal conflict, which has always been kind of, it's for what the movies are kind of weak, right there. He's very, I'm doing this because I want to save history and I'm Indiana Jones. It's the right thing to do, blah, blah, blah. And so they're all kind of weak in that area. And I would say that if they had one in this one is like, oh, he's putting off relationships because of this thing that's driving him to do what he's doing.
Right.
And you're really, to me, like there's that one very psychedelic one where you're going through the corridors.
Yeah.
You're like basically just doing a loop, right? In the
it's
school.
Trippy as hell.
And it's very trippy. And that's optional.
Yes.
It's all about like his internal struggle of
his motivations. Why are you doing
his motivations? Why are you doing this? And it's like that is when you get done with that, and then also it's just really cool endings and like really cool things are happening, like cool one-liners and stuff like that. When you get through, you're like, I really feel sorry for the people who didn't find this random temple in
I
this
mean, I would just
jungle
say
like
like
island.
you've got to do it. I mean, like I think to me, if it's like if you're gonna play this game, play the side quest, or it's like it's. I won't say it's not worth it. I'm sure there's still a lot of fun just mainlining the main quest, but it feels like again you're missing out on a lot of the meat of like the Indiana Jonesing of things. You know what I mean? Like there's so many puzzles that are only in those side quests. There's so many like little tomb things or little things like that that you only get to do in those side quests.
Well,
And
there's
then the
even
main
things
quest.
like
Yeah,
there's,
go
I was
ahead.
gonna say there's even things that's like, you're getting items or other historical relics because you're like, this is the right thing to do, and so I'm gonna put this back into a
Sure,
museum on the
sure.
way to do this larger thing. And so it feels very
Well,
in line with the
and again, it's
character.
it's optional, but like even in the Vatican, like your main thing is finding the cat mummy, right? But then one of the optional things is to like investigate the mad priest that like talked about like you find this like tomb and he like, oh, the mad priest did it. And like you can just leave it there. You don't have to investigate what was going on with the mad priest, but there's a whole quest line that lets you understand more about what he was raving about, which is like he's talking about the Nephilim, I think, which is exactly like applied to what you were doing. You're trying like it's like that was the guy that attacked you, in the beginning. It was a Nephilim or one of the giants. And so it's just like the quality of plot details even that you're getting in these side quests, they don't feel like side quests. They don't feel like they should be almost optional content.
I know.
But
I think it
then
makes it better though that they are optional because
it does.
it makes it feel like I don't know.
Well,
You have a better feeling for like, oh, I'm glad I did that.
and it makes you want to go explore, right? Like it
Yeah.
makes you want to go scour every inch of every map because you don't know one might pop up and you don't know where. Yeah, no, man. And then just to talk about the main quest, like it's just a great
I do want
Indiana
to
Jones plot.
a small spoiler thing here. Like let's
Okay,
like
okay.
everyone because I want to talk about it like in its full
Yeah.
extent, and particularly what the story's about, really.
Yes.
And so spoilers if you haven't seen it.
I would say
Or
if you're gonna play it, just pause the podcast now,
yeah.
go play it, come back because I think yeah, I do want to dig into the plot. But it is I didn't see it coming. I think there's a great twist at the end that I didn't see coming, and I think it just it the intrigue of what's happening and why it's happening the whole time
Yeah.
really pulls you along really well. So I don't
Yeah.
want to take that away from anyone.
Right, yeah, and we can dive into. I think we gave everyone a large enough thing now.
Yeah.
I'll say this is like, for me, Indiana Jones is one of the highlights of every movie. Is okay. What's the MacGuffin we're after,
Right.
and then what's its historical context,
Right.
and then what is it, and then how does it tie into like either the real day stuff or whatever. And so, like example. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Obviously, we know we're looking for a crystal skull. There was a lot of speculation that had to do with aliens,
Right.
and which excited me as a kid. And then, of course, I'm a defender of that movie, but they could have done better in terms of revealing stuff. Same
Yeah.
thing with Dial of Destiny. Like, I was like, oh, it's something to do with time travel because it's a
Yeah.
dial, a
Yeah.
clock, those kind of things, which I love time travel. So it's kind of like, what's the next thing we're getting, right? We had the Ark of the Covenant in the
Right.
first game.
You're
We
always
had
wondering where's the magical where's the magic or the religious power going to bleed into reality?
Yeah,
This
and
time.
I think the religious stuff to me is the best stuff they do.
Sure.
Like not the scientific, like the themis, the whatever you should pronounce it, or the time travel dial, or the crystal skull. I
Yeah.
like not even Temple of Doom with like
No, yeah.
I mean, I like the Ark and I like the Holy Grail.
No, I
Like
agree.
when
I
you're
think there's something because, well, I think partly because like there's a giant portion of the population that actually does believe in the power of these objects
yes,
or this history,
yeah,
and so like it makes sense that Indiana Jones is like a kind of a biblical scholar. You know what I mean? Just
yeah,
because again, like everyone was a Christian in the 40s anyway. And so like it's going to be your like introduction to ancient texts
yeah.
and like things like that. And so I just think I don't know, it is really cool. I agree. It just feels like it's always exciting to see how they're going to interpret it. How
Yeah.
are they going to interpret, well, the Bible says this, how are they going to interpret that to reality at this point or whatever?
Yeah. I will say pretty early on, and just to get a small thing, is that there's these kind of idols that are being taken from these. You said Nephilim earlier, who are these basically not modern day, but they're an explanation for giants,
They're a race of
right?
giants that
Yes.
in
which is
theory,
very
like in the
biblical.
Bible, we're like, yeah, we're part of a certain like secret order, and then yeah, like it's kind of like
Weirdly, I had researched them before, like right before the game had come out. Nothing related to the game,
that's fine.
and I was like, how did like such a
Well,
weird thing.
and which the DLC we are getting supposedly next year
Yes.
is about them is going to that's one thing that is a
didn't
little
know
bit
that.
of a
That's
loose
cool.
end, right, in the main story, so we get to kind of get more direct lore and all that kind of stuff.
Very cool. Very cool.
Very exciting.
So we know that they're these Nephilim or whatever, this guy who played by Tony Todd, who's the voice of Venom, of course,
and I just
Candyman.
didn't even see it coming, and he's just
Oh yeah,
wonderful.
I guess he's on the cover of the game, and I just never paid attention to it or
No,
whatever.
yeah,
But
I mean, yeah, he's a big Star Trek actor, was in
yes,
some huge, like some of the best episodes of DS9 he's in.
yeah,
And stars in, so, yeah.
and he's a perfect like henchman for that role,
Well,
right?
yeah,
Or
and
henchman is loose, but like a physical foil for
because
Indiana Jones.
he even through the mocap, you can see this like weight behind his eyes. You can see this kind of like
100%.
you can really kind of tell he's not bad. Like he's not evil.
No.
He doesn't look like evil. He looks just like burdened
Tormented.
almost, right?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And like that came like Tony Todd is a perfect actor for that kind of role in general. His just look has like just naturally he has that look to him. And so man, it was such a wonderful surprise to see him in the role. And then he just killed it. Like he's just I loved every second.
Some melancholy too, because he just passed away like a month ago or 2 months ago.
I know.
So he didn't even get to see like the reaction to the game, which I
feel
like it's the coolest thing. I mean, he was good as the voice of Venom, but you're not doing much there. You're just being a monster.
Yeah.
And I think that it would have been cool to see him talk about interviews about this afterwards, because he's one of the few actors who actually it's his face and he's acting, and he's not like Troy Baker going through Harrison Ford kind of thing.
Right.
So, so bottom line, they're looking for these idols that contain these stones, and the stones are tied to a thing called the Great Circle. And the Nazis are the bad guys in this, which I'm always very appreciative of. And when they're not Nazis, they're just fascists, So they're always a good bad guy because you don't
black
ever
shirts,
feel bad about
Mussolini black shirts. Yeah,
you don't feel bad about punching out Nazis in a video game. And so they're also looking for this because, of course, like the Ark, like the Holy Grail, it is going to help them win Zawar, as they would say.
Yes.
And so
Emmerich Voss is the leader of that and just absolutely nails the classic indie villain.
He's the best indie villain of all time.
You're right. I think you're right. Like he feels like he has that kind of cartoonish like he's just kind of like he's dramatic.
A little mustache twirly, but he's smart, and he's like a scalpel.
Yes, and he just
and again, 80% of my love,
good chemistry, like the back and forth between him,
especially at the end when they got more face to face.
Yes,
and of course, I think 80% of my love comes from the ancient or the Japanese karate. Whenever after I beat the game, I was walking around the house. I kept asking Kimberly all day, "Have you heard of the Japanese for karate?"
And then you fight him, and he's actually using it. He's actually he's doing
karate. As soon as he mentioned it, I was like, "Oh my god!" And you kind of knew we were going to get one anyway.
Yeah,
but you're like, "What a perfect setup for a fist fight at the end."
Yes,
it's just it's like my face is going to hurt. I won't be smiling too much in this podcast. But it's like, what a magical way to set that up, and it's beautiful. So you have him, Voss, as this bad guy, and of course there's a love interest who's a journalist who's looking for her sister,
and was
may or may not.
Nailed the classic indie sidekick love interest,
and I think kept up with this, not so much Temple of Doom, but definitely Last Crusade, even Dawn of Destiny, and mainly Raiders of the Lost Ark. We're keeping up with that kind of strong female side character.
Right,
not someone who's
opinionated,
weak,
yes, is like yes, and I think too, they did such a good job. Obviously, Marion isn't in this, but she's referenced heavily several times.
Yeah,
and I do think they did such a good job of placing this little. Not even. I mean, they don't even. Did they kiss maybe once? Maybe at the very end they kiss. But other than that,
maybe
like
once.
it's like more like a fling. Putting it at a place in between the Marion relationships and the other things, it didn't feel like. It didn't feel like it was just perfect. It was like that's how you do another love interest when we know Indiana's eventually going to end up with Marion, so we don't actually we're not heavily invested in the future of this relationship, right? But
Yeah.
it just they did so well. Like it felt like a classical Hollywood kind of love interest kind of thing, and it just I loved
I was
it.
thinking
And
by
she
the
was
end of
great.
it,
The actress that did her was fantastic.
she was great. We need to look up her name. By the end of it, I was like, I can see a version of this where if we get a second, third game, maybe more, hopefully we get something.
Yeah.
I could see her being like Indy's second love. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mm.
his like the one that got away or she tragically dies in the third game or something that's like
Yeah.
that kind of adds more pain to his arc. Because Marion, she's only in the first movie and she's
Right.
in she makes an appearance, of course, in Dial of Destiny, but she really doesn't come back until Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
So that's Alessandra Mostranardi. She's an
Okay.
Italian actress, and yeah, she was mocap too. I mean, she looks exactly like her
Okay,
character.
looks just like her.
And she did fantastic. Yeah, but you're right. Like, I mean, like even how they end it with it's kind of like, well, the reason she says no, she's like the world's about to pop off, or like at the cusp of World War II starting, right?
Yeah.
And so she's like, and she's an investigative journalist, so like her world is about to be crazy. There's already been like just in the comments, like who knows what Velati, but a lot of people are speculating like, what if the next one is set during World War II? We haven't had one set during World War II.
I was wondering, yeah, because we know that, like, from what I understand, I believe in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, he obviously he fought World War II, and
is that implied? He fought in it.
He was a soldier in it, yeah. He was in it for a little bit.
It makes sense just knowing who Indiana Jones was at the time.
Why wouldn't he? Yeah.
Right, but like,
I mean, he already was fighting them, but like, why wouldn't he like enlist?
Join up? Exactly. Yeah. He's patriotic. Yeah. I mean, I think it would be a tricky needle to thread of like you still don't want to be a shooter, right? And so you'd have to find a way to like. Maybe he does stumble upon an ancient mystery in the middle of a mission.
You can be an intelligence officer. You don't have to be a.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. I mean, he could be working against the people. I mean, like Hitler was still trying to acquire artifacts during World War II and stuff like that.
Dude, I was thinking about this. Like, what if you get to fight Hitler in one of these games? Like, what if Indiana Jones is the one? Like, that would be the ultimate bad guy. It'd be Hitler. But also, would they want to do that? Because it's like, is it too on the nose? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think it could work. But yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of stuff for the future potential. But getting back to the game itself, I do want to talk about just like the plot reveal, right? So like you're looking for these stones. You eventually find out that they are transporting you different places around the world. I mean, they have this great reveal where you're going in the Himalayas and then all of a sudden you see a giant German battleship in the tall part of the mountain. You're just like, and that's really before you get the full reveal of what they're doing. And it was like one of those like, what? I mean, I had trouble.
I guessed it.
Okay.
I was kind of like, just because of where we've been at with entertainment in the last 5-10 years.
Sure.
I was like, I bet these stones fold space and time so you can be anywhere at any place.
Yeah.
That's the initial property they do.
Right.
Why they do it is much more interesting than that.
Yes. What you reveal is that they're all connected to Noah's Ark, right? And that this was all like, and this is the part where I think it's so interesting because they didn't have to do this. They gave us this like mechanical workings of like the power of God for the Ark and the Great Flood, right? They're like, we just, I mean, in the story, it's just like Noah builds a boat. It rains, and then it rains, goes away, gets off the boat. He collects
right? 2 of every animal.
He does, but like it's also like it's implied that they all
all
come to him in a way, right? Like it's implied that like you're right that like it's just like God makes all this stuff happen, kind of just magic wand like, and then they just and so to like explain that like, oh well, actually what God did was give him these 9, I think, magical stones that all slot into like the wheel of the ark, and then that allows the whole ark to go anywhere. And like that's how he collected 2 of every animal. Is he had these like magical transporting stones given to him by God, and you're like, that's such a cool idea to take that story and give it that kind of explanation and mechanics. And yeah, like I mean, like when you look back on it, like the Great Circle and like the stones themselves or whatever, like they're interesting in of their own. Like it's a cool little plot. Like, but when you get to that reveal, it's like, oh shit! Like it kind of makes the game feel bigger, in scope and in scale,
much bigger. And obviously the set piece at the end where you're at. And
Yes.
as a small sidebar, um, I'm not hugely religious or anything, but my favorite story as a kid growing up was Noah's Ark.
Sure.
I'm sure there's a lot of kids, and I think it's
Sure.
because it's like in some books it's like pretty early on, in some books, you can read it pretty early in some
Yeah.
places.
Oh, it's in Genesis.
And yeah, and so I think that's probably one of the reasons I read it because it was early in the book. So as a kid, I had a kind of a connection to it, and when it was popping on the screen, I was like, oh man, this is my favorite Indiana
Yeah.
Jones MacGuffin of all time.
Yeah.
And also, I'm sure there's books that do a good job at this. I know there's other like Indiana Jones and Lost City of Atlantis. There's some other like
Yeah.
choose your adventure kind of games that are really popular amongst
Yeah.
fans
From the 90s, the
yeah,
LucasArts games. Yeah.
and I say that to bring up the fact that there's more real estate to kind of dive into some of what's happening, what you're collecting versus a 2 hour movie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Right.
I just think where we end up and then how the bad guy is defeated,
Yeah.
which weirdly for me, I have like a love-hate relationship with. I like the morality of it. It's like, the villain gets destroyed by their own greed and their not
Right.
and
Their
their
actions.
misunderstanding of
Yes.
history. That's why they
Yes.
die.
Yes.
And
I do like
Indiana
that.
Jones
Just like
survives
it's just like Raiders
because,
of Ark.
but they all do that. They
Yeah, you're
all
right.
die
You're
because
right.
of their manipulation of history
Right.
versus his preservation and understanding of it. And he's a teacher and those kind of things. It all really fits nicely together.
Yes.
This one does feel it still gave us also a one-on-one with the bad guy, and it
Yes.
also killed him in a cool way, which I was
It did.
appreciative of.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, fist fighting, Nazi villain on the Noah's Ark during a flood and lightning strikes.
Yes.
How I don't know how they're going to top this one if
And
they
getting
do
to
another
watch
one.
this mustache twirling villain like have a baby fit because it's not going his way, right
Yeah.
before you get to beat him up and kill him, like whatever.
Yeah.
Like I think, yeah, no, it's fantastic. I mean, like it's all of a sudden flooding everywhere. Like it's just it ramps up at the end in a really interesting way, in a cool way that I didn't necessarily expect.
Yeah, in a way that I think felt natural and good. Like even Noah's Ark, it
Yeah.
looks ancient, like it looks
Yeah.
very simplistic and not
Right.
something that they would build back then. It's obviously huge.
Yeah.
But that reminded me of like, oh yeah, this is like all great treasure movies. The treasure is something different than what you think it's going to be.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think they nailed that aspect of it. And then we said this privately, but I'll say it publicly now. It's the best Indiana Jones movie since the third movie.
Well, I was thinking about this. There's over 4 hours of cutscenes in this.
Oh yeah,
That's
for sure.
that's longer than any like there's just the cutscenes are longer than any, like there's a movie right there, right, just within the cutscenes.
Easy.
And like a movie and a half or two. And so you're right. Like it's weird. Like if you're an Indiana Jones fan, you have to find a way to play this. Like it's required reading now. It's not just a fun interpretation. It's like, no, you really need to play this if you want to like get the best of what this character is and like really understand him and really, understand the magic of what the fun of it is. And I think it's really cool seeing so many people, like younger people that didn't grow up on Indiana Jones or Raiders or like, maybe all they've seen is Dial of Destiny and it just was like, well, I don't want to watch any of those. You know what I mean? And like them being like, I wasn't really a fan of the IP, but gosh, this is so good. And now I want to go watch the old movies. And like, I think it's unexpectedly this game could have a huge impact on the IP of Indiana Jones, bigger than Dial, bigger than Crystal Skull. Like this could, like, I think a lot of people, there's already been rumors that like they're greenlighting more, right? More Indiana Jones.
I really hope so. I haven't looked into it. I've been very conservative with my expectations. I just don't want to be hurt. I've been hurt many times lately.
Yes, but there's a chance that this is a beginning of a new Indy trilogy.
It has to be, right?
That becomes the best Indy trilogy. You know what I mean? Like it's just like that's not where I thought Indiana Jones would go as an IP. And I'm so excited about it because I didn't know I needed to feel this much like Indiana Jones in a game. I didn't know I could. I didn't know it was possible to embody the character this much. Like Batman, in some ways, Batman is like makes so much sense. That's such a video game type character, right? Like it's made for a stealth combat game. Indiana Jones doesn't have maybe necessarily the same like obvious things, but like it just is like I just want to play more games now. Like, of course, I want to watch the movie still, but like, this is peak Indiana Jones. Like, it doesn't like
It also kind of brings
Raiders
up
of the Lost Ark is like an iconic film, and like, I don't think I'd ever put anything over it, but like, it's just right there with it in some ways of just like, this is the best, some of the best you can get in terms of an Indiana Jones experience.
Well, it also kind of it brings up to this point where I feel like a lot of times when we're getting sequels 20, 30 years later, I'm always like, yeah, I can't wait. That's great because I love the character and the property. But there's always this tendency, and I get why, and because part is the limitations of the character or the actor, whatever, is to give them like they're getting older and now what does an older Indy look like or an older Luke Skywalker look like? And there's something just absolutely, there's a reason why the original trilogy is the best because that's peak, like you just said, peak Indiana Jones. Like he's at
Harrison Ford in his prime.
And we'd like to watch even athletes, people in sports, actors, singers. We want to see them in their prime. We want to see, Bon Jovi or Beyonce, whoever, when they're the best, their vocal cords are the best, right?
Especially in an action adventure movie where like stunts are a part of the appeal, right? Is like watching someone do crazy stuff, like even like, this game had several callbacks to several stunts that Indiana Jones does with the airplanes in Shanghai. There was two of them. Like, there's one where, I don't know, there's one where you're shooting the gun.
You shoot a tail.
And if you shoot your tail, that you're like, what happened? You're like, we got hit. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same line.
It happened to me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Of course. I wasn't even thinking about the tail. And then I just saw, I was like, oh, that probably
it's right in the way of your reticule though. I mean, like,
it's
like
this is
fly,
the worst designed gun ever.
They fly. Yeah. I was thinking whenever that scene, I was like, man, how many people killed themselves if this was accurate?
Right.
No, but hey, sidebar, when you jump off the plane to the wing to fist fight that guy.
Yes.
Oh, it's so good. It's so fun and adventure like, and it's like I said earlier, it's just magical, and it kind of makes me wonder, like, I thought about it just now in the last 5 minutes we were talking, but wouldn't it be cool to see a Luke Skywalker game where where we have someone do an impersonation of him, and it's like we're just seeing prime Luke and having a fun story, and like we're not worrying about
we've done
offending Mark Hamill.
We've done it before, like in the Dark Forces in Jedi Knight 1 and 2. And Jedi Knight 3 Academy, Luke's all in there. It's not Mark Hamill, but young Luke. It's right after Jedi in Return of the Jedi Luke.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it hasn't been done. I'm saying like it would be cool to have a new story.
Oh hell yeah!
Because again, it's like writing it's the second probably most expensive behind a movie is making a video game, but it's much cheaper in terms of. I mean, this again, we go to multiple different locations, multiple places, huge set pieces. Like
in a way,
this movie would have been a $400 million movie. You know what I'm saying?
Right? Yes, exactly. I mean, like they're in Egypt, the Himalayas, in like the jungle in Vietnam. They're in the Vatican. Like you're just getting to all those locations would be so much fucking money. Like you're just the money to do all that without just green screening everything. Right.
Right. Yeah. Sidebar. I was in the we spent a lot of time in the Vatican,
I love it. I love that level.
I watched Conclave right afterwards. And I was like, I've been here. Like I've been in the Vatican. Like I've been in the Conclave with Ralph Fiennes. Like it's coming up for Best Picture.
Okay.
And it's all about finding the new Pope. And I was like, I've been in the Sistine Chapel a lot lately.
Yeah. It was cool. It was cool. I mean, I loved the camera mechanic of getting to like take different stuff and then you'll get a line from him or you'll get like more context, or like I even loved the mechanic with the camera that like when you're on the big puzzles, if you're stuck, if you take a picture of it, it'll give you more hints. Did you?
Sure.
Yeah. And like, I mean, part of it was just that kind of like, it's fun. And this is similar to like the Assassin's Creed games, some of them at least. It's fun to explore ancient real places that you don't have access to or aren't existing anymore today. Getting to explore the Sphinx and like the pyramids and all that kind of stuff. It's
very cool. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, it's also like, I mean, it's as you should. You want to put everything you have into the property you're working on, and you don't want to save stuff for later. And it really feels like they use like all the best locations, right? In this first game.
Sure.
Obviously there's other locations to be done, but I'm saying they went to Egypt. I mean, if you think of tombs, you think of Egypt, Vatican for religious purposes. I mean, they really hit some good places. I'll say the last anecdote here, and this is why you should play this game, is that there was a few times where the kids would be watching me play or Kimberly would be watching me play, and she'd be like, "This game looks really hard." Like she's like, "This game looks really, really hard," and then I would like flip a switch or solve the puzzle, and I'd say, "You know how I did that?" And I'd go, "Why go?" Because I'm Indiana Jones. So I told, I said that so many times over the last 2 weeks. And so, that's because awesome. It makes you feel like Indiana Jones. It makes you feel like this character that I've loved for a very long time. And they do it in a way that you're getting to make decisions as Harrison Ford, but also get to see his performance. And I really loved it. I hope we get more.
Yeah. I mean, just to go back to it, I mean, like it is a puzzle game. I mean, like a large portion of the gameplay is solving puzzles. And they're great puzzles. They're really good. Like they're puzzles that are not so challenging that you get frustrated and want to give up. Though that did happen a couple times. But they make you feel smart when you figure it out too, right?
Yes.
And I think that's the line that a puzzle game has to tread, especially a mainstream puzzle game. It's not a game about puzzles. You want it to be accessible while still being challenging. And I also do think they did a great job of like giving you varied difficulty with that kind of stuff. Like, do you want hints or do you want no hints? Do you want little bitty hints? Do you like it gave you options to kind of play it. And there's like an easy mode for all the puzzles where it's just basically like, I guess they designed two different versions of it, and one's just a little more complicated, one's more straightforward. And if like all you want to do is be here for the story and the action, and you don't have to like use your brain for that part, that's an option. And I think that's cool. That's really cool. But I personally loved all the puzzles, and every time I'd find a new one, it was just like, oh, I'm so excited to do this.
I do want to say one thing, and we do have to kind of wrap this up in the next 10 minutes, is one thing we didn't talk about, which is a huge part of this game. And it's actually what made me nervous, because when they announced this game, I was like, man, I just wanted Uncharted,
right? But
Indiana Jones. Like, I just wanted a third-person game, because I prefer third-person adventure games. Sure. And this is a first-person game.
It is.
And boy, was I wrong. Like, making first person was the absolute right decision.
Yeah.
And even when you're jumping, like
it'll switch to third sometimes.
I don't know if I've ever played a first person. Yeah, it does, but I don't think I've ever played a first person game where it's like I'm also a platformer. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't, and to this level.
There are some, like Mirror's Edge comes to mind. Like there are some that,
of course, yeah.
But they aren't as they're more rare for sure.
Yeah, and so I thought it was a very interesting choice, and it works. Like it really works, and even just. Man, it's just such a fun thing, and
it really
disguises
to the immersion so good.
It does.
It really makes it feel good in terms of like, of course, this game could have worked in third person. I mean, I don't think there's anything that would have broken it, but as far as again feeling like Indiana Jones, you want to feel like Batman, you play Arkham. You want to feel like Indiana Jones, you play this, and then I think the first person mode it really adds to it.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this does a better job making me feel like Indiana Jones than Batman does, or Arkham does Batman. And I love those games. I love those games.
I think that's valid. Yeah, I mean, like it's like as far as licensed games, this is one of the best that's ever been made.
Yeah,
and it just kind of snuck up on us in December.
Yeah, I know. What a wild in the way.
I do want to say that I do want to speculate just quickly because I think it's fun on the DLC because. I saw some comments about this and it sparked my interest and I kind of was going with it a little bit. So the thing with the stones, right, is that they're written in this like ancient language, like the first ever language that was like made. Yeah. Right. Like, and that's like, it's like the first
which I learned about literally the week before playing this game. Oh, really weird. Yeah.
What's interesting in the Bible, not too long after the flood, is the Tower of Babel, which I don't know if you know where the Tower of Babel is. It's like God basically created other languages. Like everyone spoke the same before that, and then he made other languages. And so a lot of people are wondering, is that the giants, is it going to deal with the Tower of Babel and the giants, anything going on with that? Like that's another area where it's like, that's another fun nugget of like kind of biblical history that a lot of people know about that would be fun to like take an angle on, like what really happened there or whatever.
If it's DLC, I wonder how long it'll be, and I'm I'm assuming it'll be like just a whole new environment, right? Like,
I assume, yeah. I'm
like
hoping
the Vatican,
for is that you just get another Egypt or another, like it's going to be one location, but maybe like a 10-hour. I mean, like I think I beat this at like it was like 35 or around that. I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe closer to 30. And and it had 3 kind of big locations that all took significant amounts of time. So yeah, I would hope we're just getting like just one more of those. Just give me another open world section. Give me more mysteries, more puzzles, but just, another like one more Giza, but in a different place. That'd be perfect.
I think it'd be great. Yeah, I think we could talk about it at least another 30 minutes or an hour. There's a lot of little things too, just in terms of upgrades and the books you find, and
yes,
and then
it's a great progression system.
Yeah, it's very fun, and there's some faults to it. Like I don't love the stamina system. I'm not sure it feels it slows you down versus like actually I think adding to anything. And
sure,
but there's some complaints, but I think overall it's a great game. But I think we do have to wrap this up.
Sure.
How do our listeners write into us, Daniel?
Listeners, you can write into bit.ly/241mail and let us know what you thought of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I'm very excited. I mean, like, I do feel like I agree. We could talk 30 more minutes to pick out other callbacks, other highlights, other cool missions, other cool puzzles, other moments that just gave you the adrenaline shot of like, I'm Indiana Jones right now. The giant snake. Oh my gosh. Such a great, scary ass
cool.
mini boss. You know what I mean? Cool. Actually making me scared in the video game. I want to know what your favorite part of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle was. bit.ly/241mail.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see people's reaction on the PlayStation side. I'm really hoping this thing does well financially. Game Pass kind of murkies the water a little bit.
It's on Game Pass. Like, I mean, on PC and Xbox, you can get it with Game Pass. So, and like, it is a perfect get in Game Pass for a month and beat Indiana Jones because it won't take you more than a few weeks.
For sure.
Depending on how much you play. But like, it will be. I mean, obviously, when it releases on PlayStation, that'll be a big metric because there are a lot of people that only do PlayStation that don't have a PC or Xbox. So, and it's got about the best word of mouth it can get prior to that. You know what I mean? Everyone wants to play it, and everyone that plays it just has good things to say about it. So, hopefully, I agree. Hopefully, I mean, it's a critical success already. It's even like it's a PR success for Xbox. Xbox needed a game this good so bad. A game that everyone's talking about, everyone wants to play. Like, they haven't had one of these in a really long time. Like, not even Halo Infinite was this positive a reception. Like,
it wasn't. No, I mean, do you think that, like, we have to get off here. Do you think it being a timed exclusive will hurt it? I mean, it hurt it in terms of like, I don't know. It feels like Xbox just. We can have another podcast.
I mean, their strategy now is like full on. We're a multi-platform business now, which
doesn't really matter. Like this matters so much to them then versus Game Pass.
As someone that has invested in the Xbox ecosystem for years now, like a decade, it really feels like, well, why wouldn't I just get a PlayStation next gen so I can play everything? Because your games will come on it too. You know what I mean? Like PC games, like it's like and I will say, like, hey, maybe that Xbox handheld will be like really good, and I'll transition to like Xbox handheld PS5 like life. You know what I mean? I'll just have my Xbox library on the handheld, and then I'll do. Who knows? But like, it is a little bit like I want Xbox to succeed because I've invested a lot of money and time into their ecosystem, and I want.
It's fun seeing your team, win and compete.
Well, and it's just like, I don't want the Xbox. Like, I bought an Xbox. We bought the Xbox Series X on day one. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want at the end of this generation,
day one.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want it at the end of this generation to be like, well, that was the last Xbox, and we're not releasing anything. Like, if they're like, that's the last Xbox, it's like, we're not even going to get next generation games dumbed down for this one. You know what I mean? It's like, I just don't want it to become a dead console or just, a streaming box, a big ass streaming box. But
I agree, man. I agree. I feel like that is the future. But we'll see. I don't know. Maybe this will change minds, but I think that is what's going to happen. I think it makes the most sense too, but we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, I'm very curious. If you listeners can't write into our Bailey, you can always find us in the comment section below, youtube.com/@24studios. If you didn't know already, I'd safe to say that we both love this game. And if you love Indiana Jones, then you're really going to love this game. And if you like games in general, I think you're going to find a lot to love about it. It's going to be a perfect game for you, but obviously having a tie to the property will push you over the edge and then some. Absolutely. So I'm looking forward to us talking about the DLC when it comes out. Maybe we'll do an episode on that. Who knows? And it'd be great. Anyway, it's fun talking about this, Daniel. I'm both glad we played it, and I'm looking forward to 2025.
Indeed. Indeed.
My name is Donovan Thompson.
I'm Daniel Wingfield.
And we have spoken.